Hi, I want us to begin this week by taking a look at C. Wright Mills's The Sociological Imagination. According to C. Wright Mills, there's the potential for us as a society to be very boxed in. What do I mean by that? Living our daily lives without asking questions. For example, you're in a crowded elevator. In this crowded elevator, where does your mind generally go? Where does your eyes generally go? Our eyes become focused on the number panel. So does that mean we get to our destination any faster? No, it doesn't. So then why do we do it? We don't stop to ask ourselves the question, why are we looking at the number panel? So taking you out of the elevator really quickly, I want to place you in a subway car or a bus, New York City Transit, and you are focused on reading the ads on the display. Do you ever stop to wonder why you're doing that? Chances are you don't. You just do it. I also want to share that there's a possibility that these are the exact same ads that you see day in and day out. Yet, you still look at them. Why? So C. Wright Mills comes around and he says, you know what? We ought not to live our lives in a box. We ought to get out of the box. How do we get out of the box? Simple, by asking questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how? These questions take us out of the box, and it allows us now to become more aware of our surroundings. It allows us to become more aware of our place in our surroundings. And according to C. Wright Mills, by utilizing the sociological imagination, we're able to promote growth. Now, a sociologist, bearing in mind the concept of the sociological imagination, sociologists have 5 distinct tools that they use to try to get us out of the box, to try to determine how society ticks. What are these tools? They include social action, social structure, functional integration, power, and culture. Social structure refers to the patterns of relationships. Social action determines how we get from point A to point B. So I want to become a nurse, but I'm a student. Is it a possibility for me to become a nurse? Absolutely. I go to school, I study hard, with motivation and hard work, I can become that nurse. So it's getting from one point to another. Then we have functional integration. Functional integration assumes that society operates like a well-oiled machine. Within the confines of this machinery, all the parts work interdependently toward the functioning of the whole. So in other words, you need me and I need you. You need a professor to teach you, and I need students to teach. Functional integration. Then we have power. Power is very simply the ability to get someone to do your will. And we have culture. Culture comprises of 5 components: knowledge, language, symbols, values, and norms. By themselves, none of these determine culture. However, in combination, we can identify culture. Now, when we take a look at the field of sociology, when we ask the question, did sociology always exist? And the answer is, the name may not have existed a long time ago. However, the elements of sociology, which is a study of society, has always been around. Now, I want to take us back historically, going prior to the 18th century. So, what did society look like prior to the 18th century? Prior to the 18th century, all attended church. Most people attended church. Everyone in the village knew each other. There were no mass transportation as we know mass transportation today. The family was the heart of the village, and the school was home was school, and school was home. Church determined social order. So church was back then the be all and all. Landlords exploited tenants, and you had a lot of conflict between family, neighbors, feuds, commoners. And with that being said, as we look back at the 18th century, that was what marked pre-18th century. Moving forward, we had some major changes in society that led about to changes as we know today. What are some of these changes? We had the Protestant Reformation, the American and the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, and we had September 11. The Protestant Reformation, in essence, was where there was a breakaway from the Roman Catholic Church, and the breakaway was caused by several factors, where members of society or member of the church was concerned about finances, the doctrines of the church, and so with mounting concerns, we had a split of the Roman Catholic Church to what we now know as the Protestant Church. And basically what folks were saying was, look, we've had enough of the church. We've had enough of church folk telling us what to do. We want a part of the action as well. That leads us to the American and the French Revolution. Now, you will notice that I'm talking about the American and the French Revolution as if they were one and the same. No, they're not. They didn't happen at the same time. They didn't happen at the same continent. But they had things in common. What were some of the things that they had in common? We had masses that was disenchanted with the political times, with the economic times, and they wanted a change. And here in the United States, we were just concerned about the role of the British in our own economy, in our own politics, and we said no more. Back in France, folks were concerned about liberty and equality, and they said, no, we want to be free. We want to be equal. We don't want the feudal system anymore. And so with that, folks got together en masse and decided to effect a change. That led us into the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution was not necessarily about politics or not necessarily about politics. Rather, the Industrial Revolution, also the time period known as the Scientific Revolution, was the age where we had machinery actually taking over the work that man would normally do, taking over labor. So instead of men working in the fields, you would have machinery in the fields. Instead of horse-driven carriages, you would have trains. Instead of someone, instead of people doing labor with their hands, hard labor, machines were now invented to take care of that. During this time, we had the introduction of the printing press. So there was a lot of things going on during the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution brought about a lot of physical change, a lot of sociological change. It brought about social awareness and a direct change to social structure. finally we had 9/11, and as a result of 9/11, society went through a dramatic change economically, socially, politically, religiously, to the point where now, as a result of changes made from 9/11, you and I can no longer just run to the airport and run on a plane. There are restrictions now that they didn't have before. We can't just enter a federal building or a government building without having to go through certain processes as we could before. So things have definitely changed since 9/11. So again, when you take a look at where sociology is coming from, to the point where we were governed by religion, families were small and intimate, communities were small and intimate. We now had reformations and revolutions to try to push us along. Having said that, I want us to turn our attention now to some early sociologists. Specifically, I want us to take a look at Adam Smith, Karl Marx, Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, and George Herbert Mead. Adam Smith spoke about the rational choice theory. In the rational choice theory, Mead argues basically that what life is about us examining cost versus gain. So we make our decisions after carefully weighing what it will cost us versus what we will gain. And if you think about life realistically, isn't that how we go through our day? We think about things, how we go through our day, how we make long-term goals, and we make our goals based on the thought of, will this thing benefit me or won't it? We base our actions based on, will this action benefit me or won't it? And that is the essence of Adam Smith. Then we have Karl Marx, and Karl Marx speaks about the concept of class conflict. And Marx basically focuses on politics and economics. And he says if you take a look at society, society is structured basically around politics and economics. Society is divided based on the haves and the have-nots. You can tell who a person is by the car they drive, by where they live. You can tell you can tell affluence by a person's position in society, and that is the essence of Karl Marx. Karl Marx also argues that, you know what, society is such that there's always a conflict between the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots generally are unable to understand. The haves are generally unable to understand the plight of the have-nots, and the have-nots, on the other hand, can understand why the haves don't understand where they're at. So it's like you have a rich uncle, and your rich uncle doesn't understand why you're poor, and in your mind you cannot understand why your rich uncle doesn't give you some of his wealth. And that's very simply, in the simplest language, trying to explain the conflict theory. Now, in your textbook, you will read about the bourgeoisie, the proletariat, and the lumpen proletariat, and these are all part of Marx's conflict theory. So you want to familiarize yourself with that. Then we have Emile Durkheim, who addresses functional integration. Durkheim looks at the concept of social solidarity, and within social solidarity, he breaks it down into mechanical and organic solidarity. Mechanical solidarity looks at microsociology, whereas organic solidarity looks at macrosociology. Macrosociology examines interpersonal relationships, while macrosociology looks at relationships between organizations. Then we have Max Weber, who looks at social action. And Max Weber, I think, is revolutionary. And he's revolutionary in that he argues that when you take a look at society, society focuses on movement. So society doesn't stand still. We're going somewhere. We're doing something. And social action is the process of what we do to get to where we are. George Herbert Mead in the symbolic interaction theory looks at perception and how our actions are guided by perceptions. And throughout the remainder of the semester, we're going to be looking at these theories in more detail. Not only will we be looking at these theories in more detail, but a lot of your class assignments will call on you to have basic knowledge of these theories. All right? So as you go through chapter 1, these are things that you want to pay close attention to. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.